I love giving this presentation. It's this updated presentation every year at the beginning of the year at ProductCon London. Because we've been doing this for 6 years, since 2019, here at the Barbican Center. That makes me very, very proud. I started product school 11 years ago, before product management was even cool. And then it became too cool, so something like this happened.
Product manager at Office Edition. Followed my day at work in San Francisco. I've been back to the office since August, so I did my hair and I actually tried to look nice. It was such a gross day today. I took a lift to the office and went to the cafe to get some breakfast. A free coffee bar and I got an almond milk latte. We'll say that my tech company has the best food in Silicon Valley. I caught up with my work friend Zhao. We hadn't seen each other in over 18 months. I went upstairs and grabbed a conference room for myself, where I was in a bunch of back-to-back meetings this morning. I passed by my coworker Carlos. He was in a different meeting and I was distracting him. In the afternoon, I went to grab some lunch downstairs, but I forgot to take a video of it. We raided the snack room for some LaCroix and chips. I ended up getting some fried mango and this pear turmeric drink. It looked really interesting, but I didn't like it at all. The day was done, I went downstairs to the work gym. This is one of the perks that is the most about being in the office. Gym has weights, treadmills, and all the equipment that I would ever need. A short half-an-hour workout, and then I finally left the work building. Got some salad and then Ubered to my Airbnb, where I'm staying for the week. Thanks for coming with me on my adventure.
This is what I call peak product management in Silicon Valley, which is where I live. And for the record, she mentioned Carlos, that's not me. We don't work together. But I think this represents that probably something happened, right? We went from the industry being pretty unknown, with product managers being treated as project managers and their CTOs, chief marketing officers, to now seeing this whole evolution to a point that it wasn't even too productive. So we're now in a different environment. Obviously, it's been a while, for maybe the last 2 years. And what I'm going to present today is very specific things that we are seeing, that are not going to happen 5 years from now, but are already happening by some of the top Silicon Valley companies that are product-led. And my hope for you is that you can take these insights and hopefully integrate some within your current context to help you build better products and stronger teams. I also have another warning. My presentation is specifically for CPOs. So if your teams are seated next to you, they might not like some of my takes, but I come from a very good place, and I hope that this can also help you think more critically about how we can build better products that are not just better for customers, but ultimately better for your business. Last year was the year where most CEOs left, which is a nice way of saying got fired. I don't know why you find it funny, but the previous record was in 2023. So like the trend is not great. However, the market rewarded that behavior. Companies such as Nike, Boeing, Intel, or Starbucks saw their stock go up big time as soon as they announced the firing of their previous CEO or the announcement of the new CEO. So when I studied this trend, first thing that came to mind is, what does that mean for CPOs? And that's what I do for a living. So I'm privileged and grateful to have access to some of the best CPOs in the world. And I went and asked this question to them, to some of my friends, people that I hosted on my weekly podcast, such as the CPO at Cisco, Walmart, Just Eat Takeaway, the NBA, and many, many others. Some of these conversations have been shared publicly on my podcast. Some of them were kept privately. But this really helped me influence my thinking and really understand what's really happening at the board level. So the short version of it is that the CPOs are next on the chopping block. I'm glad that you are not laughing, because that wasn't a joke. That's a reality. And these are the main things that are really happening at the board level. Pressure is real for CPOs. The expectations are much higher in terms of shipping AI-powered products to market faster. And those products need to have real AI value, not just for the sake of it. Second piece is expectations around being more accountable for revenue growth from a product perspective. And the third one is around truly pushing the boundaries of AI to find meaningful cost opportunities. All three things together. You can't just pick one or the other. And this is now all directly pointed at the CPO, which is relatively new. CPOs used to be in a more cozy position, kind of pointing fingers at their sales, marketing, or technology counterparts. So last year, from this stage, this presentation around the future of product highlighted the rise of the Chief Product Officer. And I mentioned that today, over 50% of the Fortune 100 companies already have a CPO at the table. That is incredible for our industry and extremely validating because, as I mentioned, no longer are CPOs or the highest ranked person of the organization under a CTO or a Chief Marketing Officer. Now we have our own dedicated function that is more strategic than ever. However, the next level and what we are seeing now going into 2025 is the role of the CPO evolving as a general manager. Regardless of the title, it's not about changing it from CPO to GM, it's about the responsibilities of now owning both top line as well as cost in order to protect the margin for your business. And this has tremendous implications in the way we are going about building products and building our own teams. And that's what I'm going to break down today. We're anticipating that in 2025, we'll see more product transformations than ever before. This trend started around 2024 when a lot of the companies that we work with started thinking about moving their product team from being a cost center into a revenue generator. That said, being a revenue generator is not enough for that next generation product-led organizations. The next level is turning that revenue center, that revenue engine, into a true competitive growth advantage that is more sustainable. Now, here's the problem. Still to this day, over 70% of transformations fail. Over 70% of digital transformations fail. And this is a statistic from McKinsey, which is kind of ironic. The three main reasons why these transformations fail are the following. First of all, lack of CEO buy-in. Now, if your company fired the CEO in the last 12 months, you don't have to worry about this one because I can guarantee you your current CEO is very invested in a transformation. If your current CEO has been around for over 12 months, the two reasons are probably more relevant to you. Second one is lack of team adoption. And the third one is the lack of team skills. Because ultimately, strategy is nothing without the buy-in by the team and then the capacity of the team to execute at speed and scale. Because ultimately, no matter what kind of digital transformation we're talking about here, it's always more about people than technology. And these are the two most common emotions that people experience at work: anger and fear. You just imagine if anger and fear are the two most common emotions, and now you put people through a transformation, these two emotions are only going to spike. And these are supposed to be the people who make your transformation successful. So let me introduce you to the value stick. This is a framework created by a professor at the Harvard Business School. It's mostly utilized by CEOs and general managers as a way to understand what are the levers of your business and how you can improve the willingness to pay by your customers so you can generate a strong profit margin by also taking care of the cost profile. So the willingness to pay ultimately is the value perception by your user. So the higher that is, the more margin you have to ultimately charge a price for it because you want to capture always a part of that ultimate value. And the difference is what we call customer delight. But just focusing on the top line is no longer enough. We're looking at the other side of the stick, which is the margin, what we call the vendor surplus or the vendor delight. Willingness to sell is the absolute minimum price that your team is willing to accept in order to work for you. And by team, I mean vendors and other kinds of partners. The cost is the price that you end up paying to those partners, vendors, and team members to do their best work. So the difference is what we call the vendor delight. And ultimately, in between, we have the margin. So what I'm going to cover right now is three specific tactics that will help you increase your willingness to pay for your customers, and then 3 specific tactics that will help you reduce the cost in 2025. There are a lot of hot takes here, so fasten your seatbelts. Some of these things go against the classic playbook, and I love it. So let's go. The first one is around turning strategic investments into quick wins or kills. And a good way to represent that is using this visualization. It's the classic impact versus effort matrix. So if you look at the left part, you have the expected value or impact that an initiative is going to have on your business from not a lot to a lot. And then on the bottom, using the effort, which is the expected effort that will take your team to implement that particular initiative. So of course, everybody wants high impact, low effort initiatives. But the reality is that they almost never exist. Because let me tell you something, quick wins are not real. They're never quick. They can be wins, but they take more effort than expected. And let me tell you another thing. Strategic initiatives are not just CEO ideas. So the whole point of this is trying to break down those strategic ideas into smaller items through rapid experimentation. And here, what you want to do is identify the components that are truly potentially quick wins and obviously work on them. But then even in those strategic initiatives, there's a bunch of components that are not that strategic or meaningful for the business. So you want to kill them as soon as possible and push them down. That means do not work on them. Now, if you're thinking about these metrics in terms of the current features or initiatives that you already have, you can apply the same thinking and see what are the things that you can kill right now. And if you are too afraid of killing something, here's an idea. You can just kill it for a segment of your customers and see if they miss it. I can guarantee you they don't. The second initiative is around creating a variable compensation component for your product teams. And this is obviously very common for sales teams that are willing to put 50% of their salary on the line, which is a good way to align incentives because they ultimately participants of the success or not in whatever they are doing. In product, this hasn't been the case. Typically, product managers, product people, they will have 100% base, guaranteed, no matter what, and then a bonus. But the bonus is kind of a cherry on top. What I'm talking about here is creating a variable component that is removing from your base. And I know this can be scary, but this is the best way to put your money where your mouth is. Here's just an example. I don't want this to be too much, so let's call it between 15 to 25%, just enough to drive behavioral change, but also not too much to the point that is course correcting in a way that people focus too much on just short-term impact. So if you think about that 15 to 25% variable range, you can create additional metrics, so at least 50% should go directly tied to revenue impact. There could be a smaller component related to user activation or retention metrics, and then another component related to user satisfaction metrics. Again, take this with a grain of salt and apply this to your own context. But what's not negotiable in this new era is to put more skin in the game for product teams. And the third one is to embed product managers with sales, which is, again, kind of counterintuitive, because if you think about the classic product squad, we're thinking about product managers with designers, engineers, data people, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really embedding product people with sales in different ways. Here's an example. You want product people joining sales calls with your account executives. You want product people joining sales calls with your account executives. We've seen product-led companies in Silicon Valley having product teams spending around 30% of their time on sales-related activities, including sales calls. And these are not user research, product discovery calls. No. These are real sales calls where the expectation is to help your sales counterparts as well as tailor demos and lead those demos, which is also a way of saying you probably need less user researchers and less solutions architects because the PMs are now playing the role and being much more involved into really what's going on. The second consideration is to find opportunities to escalate conversations outside the classic sales call, to have conversations between different product teams, so with your clients' product teams or technical teams, as a way to demonstrate value and credibility. A lot of the high-value purchases require executive support. And there's no better way than demonstrate that quality than having different types of executives participate without sales. Because ultimately, you want to get to the core of what you are buying, and people who build the product are the best ones to be able to clarify the real value proposition for the client. And then ultimately, it's about making real roadmap trade-offs to prioritize high-value customer requests, which I know in traditional SaaS, that's not a thing. You are only able or are supposed to work on things that can be scalable, that can be applicable to many of your customers, and hopefully that's the case, but the reality is, in a high-pressure situation, you also need to be able to make those trade-offs in order to really satisfy your high-value customers. So now I'm going to switch gears and focus on the other side of the stick, which is the cost side. 3 very specific tactics that are seen work very well. Of course, we've all heard about AI, and I'm not even going to bother with this. I'm talking about rewarding massive AI-driven productivity gains. It's not just about encouraging your team to use AI because they're doing it anyway. It's about making it mandatory. It's about celebrating massive productivity gains. The different ways you can do that can be inviting people to do demos on an all-hands meeting. It can be giving them some financial rewards. It can be encouraging them to do some of learning sessions so they can teach each other, like how are they finding opportunities to save the company money through increased in productivity. And these are just some use cases. There are many, many more, but like the ones that are ultimately blowing my mind are around rapid prototyping and experimentation. It's absolutely incredible to see how many PMs are now able to go from idea to 15 prototypes without any code or even any design expertise, turning those prototypes into front-end code, being able to deploy that into production environments, to run some experiments, to put them in front of customers or artificially create types of customers that would be interested in your product through AI and debug that code. And this is happening in a matter of days. So the product teams that are already encouraging and making that type of behavior mandatory are the ones that are winning in that next generation. And by the way, this also applies to the CPOs and other product leaders. It's not just about pushing this down to the ICs to see what they can come up with. Here's the second tactic that I see becoming more and more effective. Teams are becoming much wider, and the expectation is that the managers, the people managers, are playing a role as player coaches. So what I mean by this can be clearly simplified here with this broken comp analogy. We come from a world where the expectation is, well, as a product manager, you are a generalist. You obviously come from another background because there are very few pure-breed PMs. We all did something before we became into product. Could be engineering, could be design, could be business. So that's the T-shaped model. Like you're excellent at one thing, hopefully, and then kind of good enough at everything else. That doesn't fly anymore. With what I'm saying about AI is that now you are more like a broken comp, where you have to be excellent at a bunch of things, such as the main use cases that I described in the previous slide. Of course, you cannot be the best at everything, but you definitely have to be world-class at a lot of things. And that can only happen when you are spending most of your time building. So now the teams have much more ICs. The career ladder is completely broken. No more APM, PM, senior PM, principal PM, director, senior director, blah, blah, blah. No. Even at the VP level, we're seeing VPs owning specific initiatives. The thing I said about the compensation also applies to the VPs and even CPOs. We want more executives that are acting as experts or player coaches. Everybody's leading by example here. And the last one is the classic dichotomy between buy versus build. We have all experienced these type of scenarios at some point, but it's becoming more and more relevant. And the expectation is that product teams are now buying, meaning using more software as a service or partnering with external platforms than building in-house. We all know that building in-house is extremely expensive, and sometimes we let it slide by, believing that, this is part of our competitive advantage, value proposition, and whatnot. The reality is that your value prop is much smaller, much narrower than you can imagine. So it's about just identifying that slice of your value proposition, doubling down on it, and that's kind of what makes a case for building in-house, but everything else can be productized, can be outsourced, if you will. And the beautiful thing is that there's so many SaaS solutions out there that are extremely sophisticated that can let you leverage data analytics, cybersecurity, even AI models in ways that an engineering team wouldn't even be able to replicate, let alone the cost that it would take to just maintain it. An example is some of the companies that we have on the expo hall today. They're all building SaaS solutions for product teams and allowing teams to just focus on what they are excellent at. So going back to the value stick, I wanted to visualize this again so you can understand the two levers that I was talking about. Clearly, the most important lever is increasing value. Like, that's the starter. Like, if you are not able to increase the value perceived of your product, then you don't have a business. But once you do that, that's just not going to be enough. It's also about finding other ways to maintain margin and also doing it in a way that gives you enough cushion so there is customer delight. That is the competitive advantage that I'm talking about. So in summary, CPOs now have a dual focus on increasing willingness to pay and reducing cost. They are acting as GMs officially or unofficially. They are supposed to own P&L. And in order to do that, we need to align those incentives. So the three tactics that I shared for increasing the willingness to pay are about turning strategic investments into quick wins or kills as soon as possible. I also talked about tying the product manager's compensation to revenue goals, creating specific variable components for that are part of the previous base. And the third one is about embedding the product teams with sales and putting them on the spot so they can fully understand what the customers need and have more skin in the game. On the cost side, we talk about rewarding meaningful AI-driven productivity gains, making your org wider with managers as player coaches, and doubling down on buying and partnering instead of building in-house. So if you have small kids, you'll understand these characters that I'm putting here because they are from a beautiful Disney movie. And talking about the anger and fear that most of team members feel at work, my intention with this is to show you that as a leader, we can't just turn it around, but we can make them feel heard. We can help them process those emotions in ways that are productive. So hopefully they can turn some of that into more positive emotions that can help them be part of the transformation that we all aim. This is a tool that I use with my leadership team, and I'm happy to share with anyone who's interested. I call it the vocabulary of feelings. And this is just one sheet that shows a broad range of feelings that go from happy to angry, and then different levels of intensity, from mild to strong. And I have this ritual with my leadership team. The first meeting of every day, we all go around the room sharing one or two feeling words. It's a way to create presence for people to feel heard. And it doesn't mean we all need to say, we are feeling great and happy. It means we are all feeling connected, and hopefully that can help us learn more about each other. So if any of you are interested in getting a copy of the vocabulary of feelings, just ping me on LinkedIn and I'll be more than happy to share it with you. We're also here to help with your product transformation. The same way we've done with so many clients across so many different industries. In telecommunications, we've worked with Cisco and British Telecom. In oil and gas, we've worked with British Petroleum. We've worked with Just Eat Takeaway, Financial Services, JP Morgan, and many, many others. So thank you for your time.